When I first started, I felt really nervous because I didn't know what to say, and I felt a lot of pressure, and I knew people were on there that I knew from my past jobs, my family members, friends, and it was just really kind of paralyzing. But what helped me is kind of shifting the mindset that this isn't you on a podium speaking. This is you're joining conversations. There's comment sections for a reason. You're starting posting something and people are going to respond.
A post can catch someone's eye and resonate with them and they could hire you, and that's worth over $1,000 even if you got 2 likes on it. So I'm really excited to get into this because I have just started creating content on LinkedIn. Jessica is somebody who I have really looked up to in that sense of just
Oh,
you're always top of mind with me because I'm always seeing you on my feed, and I think that's one of the big goals. So I'm excited to give Jessica the floor. I brought Gizmo to the meeting today,
oh.
and I feel like he calms me down and gives me good energy on these calls, as long as he's not being a total menace.
Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me to come on. I always love collaborating with you, and I'm excited to share what I've learned on LinkedIn basically over the past 4 years with your community. I'm going to be sharing about my personal branding experience on LinkedIn, building off of what Christine shared in the last webinar in this series. And this training is really designed for freelance writers who are where I was about 4 years ago, which is I had been, or it could be for new writers or for writers who are experienced, but maybe they're just struggling with some of these issues that I listed here. So some of the things are little to no inbound demand. So just mostly outbound, and you're not having the clients come to you, feast and famine, not hitting desired revenue goals, having trouble getting clients to accept higher rates, feeling stuck with clients that are problematic. Maybe they are, having scope creep or not paying on time, but you don't really feel like you can leave them securely because you don't have a lot of inbound coming yet. Maybe you're having trouble getting bylines, or when you get on a call with a client, they're like really asking a lot of questions and grilling you. So you have to feel like you're really selling yourself versus them already coming to you, kind of trusting you and ready to hire. So these are some of the common issues that I hear a lot of other writers struggle with and that I did myself too. And a little bit about me, my name is Jessica, and I started writing in 2013. I got started on Elance, and then that shut down. So I ended up moving to Upwork and started connecting with people on LinkedIn around 2016. When I was a generalist, so I was just pretty much writing anything and everything. In 2019, I joined the Clear Voice Talent Network, which is where I really started focusing on finance writing. And in 2020, I started building my personal brand. It was the very first time that I'd really put anything out there public facing about my writing business that wasn't my Upwork profile or Elance profile. And then in 2021, I niched down completely into finance writing, which is what I'm still doing today. Okay, so I want to talk about the power of LinkedIn. How did it help me transform my writing business? What were the results? And what are results can you possibly get from the training that I'm going to share today? So the biggest thing is increased demand and trust. So once I kind of got all my messaging and everything dialed in, I just saw this crazy amount of interest in my services. And it was the first time that that had ever happened to me and that it was coming to me. And so it was really shocking. I didn't even realize that that was actually possible. I had spent 8 years doing outbound every single workday morning before I got to writing. So this was a huge, huge shift for me. And having these interested clients coming to me allowed me to kind of zero in on what I wanted in a client, what I wanted in my work, and kind of really streamline my workflow and my roster and everything like that. And it helped me to get the bylines that I wanted before, to finally hit and surpass the rate and revenue goals that I had set and been working towards for years and not really making much progress. And then there was a huge shift when I would talk to clients. So I would get on the phone and be nervous, like, okay, what am I going to have to sell myself? And they'd be like, so when can you start? And I'm like, okay, this is different. So LinkedIn was really, really powerful in that way, mostly in the demand and the authority. So the question is, okay, how did you do it? How can the writers in this group get the same results? And I thought over my whole journey since I started in 2020 and broke it down into these 6 basic steps. So we'll work through these. And I'd love to hear in the chat too, if you're on LinkedIn already, if you have a presence, if you've started posting content, or if you're kind of on there just checking things out, how things are going so far. And yeah, so getting started, I think it's really important before you start posting and connecting and building a brand and everything that you kind of have a game plan. So you have your personal brand ideas and foundation in place so you can build upon that because it does take a lot of time and effort and consistency to get results. And so you want to make sure that you're going in the right direction. You don't want to build this house and then you're not getting the results you want and you have to start over. So the first half of this presentation is really going to talk about getting prepared and getting your ducks in a row so you can make the most of the time and effort you put into it. I like this Abraham Lincoln quote about give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I would spend the first 4 sharpening my axe. So it's like, get your ideas straight so your all of your work goes to the best use and you don't have to work so hard on the back end. So in defining your personal brand, Christine has I saw her branding doc, which helps you to really dig into it and build your comprehensive brand. But in thinking over my experience, I wanted to share some of the main things that helped me just to kind of get an idea of what I wanted to say. Because, like I said before, I had never really built a public facing presence for my business. So I was like, what do I even say? Do I have anything to share? Do I have value to offer? I didn't really know. So one of the first things that I started thinking about was what skills do I have? What are my strengths? What sets me apart? And so that can be kind of hard to self identify, but what can be really helpful is if you search your testimonials and your feedback from your clients, because then you find out not only what your like valuable skills are, but why it's valuable in their eyes and in their words. And you can use that in your content and on your profile. So some examples are, maybe you're a gifted storyteller. Maybe they love that you deliver publish ready content. They don't have to do any edits. One thing my clients always say is you take initiative. There's no hand holding. We give you a assignment and you go with it and turn it back in. So things like that, just really kind of sit down and make a list of what you can define as your strengths and skills. And the next thing is your values. So, what values guide the decisions you make in your business? And this is going to be something you want to weave through your content on LinkedIn, your profile. Clients are going to want to know this. And it's basically how you go about business and why you make the decisions you do. What can they expect when they work with you? Like, if they're going to give you feedback, what's your mindset about that? Are you going into it like you want to collaborate? You want to put your heads together to come out with the best result? If you can communicate the things behind how you operate your business, that can really help to resonate with your ideal clients. So I have some examples here: integrity, reliability, collaboration. So I would just kind of dig deep into your past interactions with clients and your philosophy on running business and write down the main core values that you have. And then what do you know? So it can be kind of like one thing I found as I started posting on LinkedIn is something that I might not see as like a valuable piece of knowledge is super valuable to other people. It's just like you get into your world and something might be normal to you, but to somebody else, it's a great insight. And so I think it's helpful to sit down and just make a list of all the things. Start unpacking your knowledge since you've been a writer about all the things that you know and that you've learned and you've experienced. And this can serve as a library that you can go to, maybe when you're not feeling very inspired on what to post or you don't know what value you can bring. You can look at this list and say, oh, yeah, okay, I have a lot of things that I bring to the table. And then it's important to think about how you want to be perceived. So, how do you want your clients and peers to perceive you in the market? What parts of yourself do you want to make sure come across online? Because a lot of people aren't going to get to meet you in person where they would normally, see who you are. So you have to make sure that these characteristics come across. So there's some examples here. And I see people take a lot of different approaches. Some people are really empathetic. Some people like to be witty and funny. Some people are more professional. So just kind of identifying the main traits that you want to be known as. And then the big question, how personal do you want to be online? And there's a lot of talk about this, like, oh, don't make LinkedIn, Facebook, and all this stuff. And then there's people who, want to share super vulnerable things like Christine was talking about in the last session. And there is a fine line there. So it's just deciding where you're going to draw that line about how much of yourself you're going to inject into your professional brand. And I think it's very valuable to show, parts of who you are and let people so that people can relate to you and, see what you're about. But also, having that line where you're also presenting yourself and making the impact that you want to make without undermining yourself, maybe with things that are going to turn clients off from hiring you. So there's an example post here of something I like to do maybe once or twice a year because there's always new people coming on LinkedIn and leaving, and you're making new connections. So I like to reintroduce myself and just share a bit about me. Like, I'm married, I have a son, my family traveled the world as digital nomads. Just some like fun facts that people can say, okay, this is what she's about, beyond the work. But also, I always like to tie it into my professional offerings as well. So you can just make a list of things that you would like to and would feel comfortable sharing online, like maybe your favorite food or drinks. I know like a few writers, I know what their favorite drink is. And when I see it, I think of them. So that's like a way to keep yourself top of mind in other people's awareness. And then lastly, for the personal brand that I'm going to cover here is, who do you serve and what do you offer? So on LinkedIn, it's very popular with freelance writers right now. When I started, there was some, but now it's just grown and grown and grown, and there's many of us on there. And so that's great. I mean, we can connect, we can meet a lot more people. And it's not just freelance writers. LinkedIn has grown as a whole of people from all professions coming on and creating content. But what that means for us is that if we want to stand out, we need to have a specific offering and be talking to a specific person. And I learned this myself because I came on as a generalist. I had always been a generalist, and I just didn't feel like I could narrow down my offerings because I didn't want to exclude anybody because I felt scarcity and I felt like I wouldn't have enough work if I cut people out. And so that stopped me from niching down for a long time. But I thought, you know what? Why not just try it? Like, why not give something else a try? Because I'm trying to hit these goals and I'm not able to hit them and nothing's working. So I'll try this. And I did. And the first time I tried it, I didn't get much traction actually. I tried to get into personal branding first, as far as like writing mission statements, branding guides, things like that. Didn't get much people biting on that. And so I went back to the drawing board, thought about, I'll talk about in the next slide about how to choose a niche, but I went through some basic things in my past work and decided on finance writing. And once I did that, I mean, within a few weeks, it blew up. And so I was like, okay, niching down can definitely have the effect that I want on LinkedIn. And I run the All Things Freelance Writing newsletter. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with that, but I share job. I see somebody giving the raised roof. I share jobs each week. And so I'm always in the mix looking for jobs and seeing the postings and seeing how many reactions are on them and watching the feedback from clients after that. And what I see often is they're looking for someone very specific. And then they'll come back and be like, if you're not, a good fit for this, then you're not standing out in the results. So look, it's better to invest your time into the better fits, but actually be a specialist for that thing so that it's the right fit. So it's hard. The bottom line is it's hard to stand out on LinkedIn with so many writers because if you don't have a specific offering talking to a specific person. And that doesn't mean that that's all you offer behind the scenes. It's just a marketing strategy to drive clients to you and get them in the door. And you can offer other things if you want to behind the scenes. So I really recommend, thinking about that. And I also saw Christine has a niching down training as part of her program that can help you kind of really figure out what you want to do. But I think that's really important on LinkedIn right now in order to attract clients to you and get the results that I got is just being very specific with who you're talking to and what you offer. And then, okay, just real quick, what makes a good niche? The four things that I really found helpful is something that's high demand, that has competitive pay, that you can do well, and that you enjoy. So those are kind of the four criteria that I used I went through all my work. By that time, I'd been writing for about 8 years. And so I'm like, okay, which of these projects do I find are offered a lot, that pay the most, that I can do well, and that I actually like? And that's what it came down for me. But, for you, it may be different. Just go through like your past work and you can kind of think about it that way if you're having trouble figuring out exactly where to niche down. And I did a survey of about 350 freelance writers to find out what they're writing and what they're being paid and all of that. And the top four niches came out to be tech, health, finance, and B2B SaaS. And then the top four writing types were blogs, articles, websites, social media, copy, and emails. That's five. I counted blogs and articles as one. But so that's just food for thought that I thought was interesting. Okay, so beyond that personal branding, The second step is setting specific goals. So thinking about your desired incomes and how you're going to get there. And the desired outcomes basically is, what do you specifically want to achieve by brand building on LinkedIn? Why are you doing this? It's going to require time, effort, discipline, and consistency. So I would recommend sitting down and writing out specifically what you want to achieve, because on LinkedIn, it's easy to get, it takes a lot of time and it's easy to get kind of lost in the sauce, basically. So it helps to know where your target is, what you're working for, and why you're doing this. So you can always tie it back to your results. So I recommend at least setting goals for these 5 things. And I think of it like brainstorming your ideal business. Like, what do you want your business to ideally look like? So that can be your revenue. And I recommend breaking it down not only per year, but per month, per week, per day, per hour, per word, even. So you know, and not that you're saying per word to your clients, but just so you know internally what your target is, and then how many hours you want to work per month, per week, per day, how many days you want to work per month, how many clients you want to have, and how many inbound leads that you want to get. So having really clear goals for these was game changing for me, just to know where the goalpost is and basically how to get there each day. Isn't this a cute little thing with the dog? But yeah, the getting to your goals is one thing, and they can feel far off when you first start. And I don't recommend setting anything that's like too far off. Like maybe you want to increase by 20, 30% at a time and then get there and then move the goalpost if you want to, just so that it is still realistic and achievable. But also, you know, you don't want to let fear not let you set a goal that you could get. So there's like a balance in there. But once you have your goal, then I recommend setting goals for the activities that it's going to take to achieve those things. So you want to set goals that you can stick to even when you're busy and having off days. So consistency is more important, I think, than like volume. You're going to have to stick to this over time to see the results. So if you're like, yes, gung ho, I'm getting on LinkedIn, I'm going to post 5 days a week. And then in a month, and trust me, I tried this, I'm speaking from experience, it can get really overwhelming and exhausting. And you're just like, I'm out of here for 2 months. And then you come back and it's just like, it's hard, especially in the beginning if you don't have that consistency. So I'd say you're better doing one post a week, than going gung ho and then leaving. So, some examples of some activity goals that you could set for LinkedIn are expanding your network, like adding 10 industry connections each workday, posting 2 times per week, say, engaging, spending 1 hour per workday engaging with connections on posts and in DMs, and then tracking your KPIs, which I'm going to talk about more a little bit later. Okay, so once you have your personal brand squared away and you have your specific goals set, then it's time to optimize your LinkedIn profile. So your profile is really like a landing sales page. So this is where the magic happens. I like to say, this is where your clients are going to go and you have the chance to introduce yourself, sell them, and talk them into messaging you. So it's really, really, really important to spend time getting this squared away. It can make the sales for you. Just like I was saying before, I used to be on the phone making the sales for myself, convincing clients that they can trust me, convincing them on my pricing, all that stuff. Your LinkedIn profile can do all that for you so that by the time they contact you, they're ready to hire you. So how? I recommend having these 4 components weaved throughout your profile. So it's the what, who, why, and how. It's not that, complex. It's not rocket scientist. It's just, it needs to be clear, very, very clear. And so the what is exactly what you are offering. The more specific your primary offer is, the better, like I was talking about earlier. Who are you offering it to? You want to call out your ideal client very specifically. Why? You need to tell and show why they should choose you, which, after you do the personal branding work in the beginning, you'll know your strengths, you'll know your values, and then testimonials, client logos, work samples can all help. And then the how. So, how to get in touch with you. And then, of course, you want it to all be coordinated with the design elements and look good so that they don't get there and feel like they can't trust you, maybe, or it's just thrown together. So, just a few examples here of how I coordinated the design. So, you just pick brand colors and make sure everything coordinates well and is cohesive. And then in my banner, so you can see that I've incorporated the who, what, and why. So the who is, who do I serve? So right there it says I serve industry leaders in the finance industry. The what, articles and stories in the finance industry. And the how is, or the why is 10 years. I have experience in this. I've written for these companies that are reputable. I deliver clear, conversational, well-sourced copy, that testimonial from my client. So that's just an example of how you can like weave all those things in right there. And I did the same kind of thing in my headline. And then down in my about section, right off the bat, I want to tell them I'm a finance writer, SEO strategist. Again, talk about the experience that I have, exactly what I write. So blog stories and long form content. I was getting a lot of people coming to me for all different kinds of things. And it was just wasting both of our time because I'm going through these inquiries and sometimes we're getting on the phone. And then I don't offer what they're asking for. So the more specific you are, the more time you're going to save for yourself and for your clients. And then the how, an example is down in this featured section. I have my call to action, which takes them to my website where they can contact me. So you can do that. You can also add a link up at the top to your website or your contact form. And then the recommendations section I love on LinkedIn because it allows your clients to give you testimonials through the system. So I think that there's an extra component of trust there because you can't make it up. You can't throw something on your website, not that saying that anyone here would, but I'm just saying in the eyes of the client, this is more trustworthy because it's a verified person and they can go click through and go see that this is a person. You can't make it up. So whenever I have clients, I ask them to leave me testimonials through LinkedIn for that reason, and then I'll move them and I'll put them on my website and other places or in my posts and stuff, but it's good to have those there. Okay, so that's all for the sales page for your LinkedIn. The next section is on getting LinkedIn to your industry. So this is about growing your network and about getting connected with the people who are also in your industry, basically. So LinkedIn provides an incredible opportunity to stay connected and you don't even have to leave your house. So back in the day, you'd have to go to trade shows to really meet people and get to know your industry, but now you don't. And this can be massively helpful for a lot of reasons that I've discovered just over the past 4 years. So referrals and leads, of course, are really helpful. That's what most of you all are here for, but it can offer a lot more too. You can stay in the know about latest news and trends in your industry, which is helpful and makes you more valuable to your clients because you can speak to those things when you're talking to them. You'll be in the know. You can learn from your peers. I can't even tell you how much I've learned from fellow writers on LinkedIn. After running my business alone for 8 years, it was incredibly helpful just to talk shop and chat and see what other people are doing, what other people are earning. I mean, it was just blew my mind. You can get to know your ideal clients on a deeper level. You can build a support network that gets what you do and is rooting for you. So, people will know what you offer. They'll send you referrals. And even if you switch and do something else, you'll have people who know and trust you and will help to support you in that. So it can be really helpful. And you can support other people. Like there's plenty of people that I follow on there who I've seen followed all throughout their career through big changes, through new projects, through launches. And it's just really cool and inspiring. And you can gain lots of other opportunities too, like podcasts. I mean, Christine said she found me on there and that helped her to invite me to do these things. So this is a perfect example right here. But sponsorships and other partnerships and all sorts of things. So there's a lot that you can gain just by putting yourself out there. So how do you get connected? If you're brand new and you have no connections and you're just getting on, how do you get in the mix? I recommend working on growing your network every day meaningfully with people who are in your industry. So with your ideal clients, potentially with your peers or with people who are connected to your ideal clients. So, that could be digital marketing agencies, possibly, or editors or strategists or even SEO people. I mean, there's just so many people connected in the content marketing world. And those people all have clients. And most of the times they all need writers. So as you're getting connected with these people, in addition to directly to your ideal client, you can have this kind of surrounding support network that benefits you. And so you can find people by searching in the LinkedIn search function. And Christine, I know, covers a lot about finding prospects on LinkedIn and how to communicate with them and how to, get connected that way. So you all probably know this part, but yeah, you can use the LinkedIn section. You can also find people in conversations that you find interesting in the LinkedIn feed. Like if somebody posts something, you're like, oh, That's interesting to me. Then you can connect with them. You can connect with people in the comment section that are writing things that resonate with you. There's lots of different ways to grow. And then number 5 is to join the conversation in your industry. So this is talking about stepping out there and posting, putting your voice out there. And so when I first started, I felt really nervous because I didn't know what to say, and I felt a lot of pressure, and I knew people were on there that I knew from my past jobs, my family members, friends, and it was just really kind of paralyzing. But what helped me is kind of shifting the mindset that this isn't you on a podium speaking. This is you're joining conversations. There's comment sections for a reason. You're starting posting something and people are going to respond. So when you think about it that way, it's like, what can I bring to this space? What do I find interesting that I want to know what other people think about? Even with your ideal clients, you're ideally wanting them to respond back and join a conversation with you. So it's kind of thinking it that way. I felt like takes the pressure off. And so one part is posting and the second part is commenting on posts that are relevant to you. So I'd recommend kind of joining conversations on other people's posts as well. Oh no, my post didn't show up there. Sorry about that. So if you're not sure about post ideas, you can screenshot this or save it for later, but these are just some ideas. Christine covered a lot with really great examples in her webinar in the last session. So I won't go too far into this, but these are some of my favorite types of posts. And as a freelance writer, I think that it's important, even though you're connecting with your peers and others in the industry, you don't want to focus too much just on talking to other freelance writers and forget about your ideal client. I think it's always important to have your ideal client in mind, and your post can kind of speak to them, and then it's relatable to your peers as well. Um, so some of the ideas you could do is to define your services, to demonstrate how you work, share opinions, share inside jokes for your industry. Like for me, I'm a big fan of the Oxford comma, and I've posted about that before. And there's heated debates over punctuation in this space. I mean, it is crazy how passionate people are about this, but it's funny, and it's lighthearted, and sometimes it's fun to incorporate those kinds of things. Sharing case studies, results about you, about your work, testimonials, things you learn, career updates, and new partnerships. Oh man, can you guys see these posts or they're broken on yours too? That's too bad. Okay, sorry about that. Basically, I had examples here. I have a post where I went on there and just really defined my niche. I said, "Hey, public service announcement. I have space in the upcoming month. I'm looking for clients who need finance blogs and articles. I can write 1 to 4 per month. I'm looking for a retainer. I can't sign any non-compete clauses." I was just very cut and dry about what I offer. And that did well. It resonated with other writers because they're like, wow, this is a great way to define your niche and to put yourself out there. And then it resonated with my clients because they're like, oh, I know exactly what you need. And yeah, I want to hire you. So that was one example I wanted to share. And another one was an experience that I had writing an article. And you guys, a lot of you probably know who write articles, that when you go to research nowadays, usually it's not very hard to find answers. So there's so much content on the internet that you can often find your sources pretty easily as you're researching. But it was a time when I couldn't find the answer that I needed. And it was about a big company, and I was reviewing them, and the information wasn't there. So I ended up calling the office, and they gave me the runaround and directed me to like the main press communicator. And they finally gave me a statement on the answer I needed. Um, and so it turned out that my article had the only real answer to this question out there, and everything else was just kind of sharing outdated information. And so this new company hardly had any domain authority, and this article went up to the top 3 right away because it had the answer. So basically, I was sharing that sometimes when it's a pain in the ass to get the answer for research, and it can be frustrating when you're just trying to get an article done, that's an opportunity. There's an opportunity in that to stand out and do something different and rise to the top. And so that kind of showed the way that I work, my approach to client work. It highlighted my values. I'm not just going to give up. I'm going to do my due diligence. And it showed the result that I got. So that was an example of a type of post you can do that kind of shows your work ethic and how you approach things. And I just have a few tips on engaging on LinkedIn. As you create your content, I'd recommend going back to your personal guide or personal branding work that you did at the beginning and just make sure everything aligns. You can go through a set of questions as you're kind of getting used to it. Like, is this going to create the perception I want? Is this aligned with my values? Is this highlighting my skills? I'm just making sure that everything is how you want it to be. Is it speaking to your ideal client? Is it not overly personal, more personal than you want to get? Those kinds of things. You can have like a checklist. And then set goals and limits. Like I said before, having those goals is helpful, but it's also easy to kind of go overboard on LinkedIn with the engagement and everything. And you might spend too much time and find yourself taking away from time that you should be working. And then you can get burnt out. So I highly recommend having limits in place too with those goals. You don't want to completely drop off, but you don't want to go overboard too. There's like a balance. And then don't be too hard on yourself. When you're first getting started, it's going to take some time for your post to gain traction. And, you might have people being like, oh, I see your LinkedIn stuff. And it can just be kind of hard at first. And you can feel like, oh, I'm not good at this, or it's not getting any engagement, or it's not worth it. But everybody feels like that. Everybody starts there. You just got to keep going and treat it like an experiment. It's not personal, you're learning. So every time you post, just track your results, see what resonates and what doesn't. And you're going to learn and improve as you go. Um, and then even when you do well, you don't want to be like, oh, I've got this figured out, because it's always going to change. And the next day your post might just not do anything. So it's just like detach from it, learn as you go, and try to keep that kind of steady keel. And then it's hard if you just try to 100% wing it. Like if you're like, I'm going to post 2 times a week, and then you're just going on and like, I don't have anything to say today. What's really worked for me, I've tried batching, I've tried creating a whole bunch of posts and at one time, like sitting down and doing it all. And sometimes they feel forced when you do it that way. So what I found really helps is saving your post ideas as they come to you. And as you start getting into this, they'll just come to you. You'll be in the shower, like, oh, I got to write this down. Or you'll be on a walk, like, oh, that would make a great post. Or maybe you're working on an article and you're like, oh, I have this insight, and so you can just start saving them like in a notes app or something as you go. So you have this like library, and then you can pull from it and refine it as you're about to post it. But that's really worked well for me. And lastly, just remembering that it's a two-way street. It's not, all the pressure's not on you. It's like a trade show in your industry. You can get in there, you can get to know people, have conversations, and it's a give and take. You don't just post your own stuff, you go and you interact with other people's stuff too and join their conversations. So the last step in my recommendations is to track and make adjustments. So like I was saying, you're going to learn as you go, and you're going to grow faster if you're paying attention and tracking what's working and what's not. So these are the main things that I track. Everything from post impressions and engagements to connections and followers, job titles you're found for, search appearances, profile views, and then of course leads, clients, and revenue. So any of these things taken alone is not going to give you the full picture. I recommend tracking everything. Like if you're just like, oh, my post did great, but you're not tying it to results, like are you getting leads, clients, revenue? Like it all has to come together to see if your whole strategy is working. And a whole bunch of, post impressions or engagements isn't necessarily good if your post isn't something you want far out there that's going to be attracting clients. So you want to make sure that it's speaking to your clients. If it appeals to your and resonates with your peers as well, they're going to help that post to rise up and go further because they're going to relate to it and support it. But then you also want it to resonate with your ideal client. So it's kind of that balance there. And then I wanted to share one last thing before we get to the Q&A. I was looking over my notes just to kind of remember what my mindset was back when I started in 2020, 2021. If you're feeling like, I don't know if this is going to work for me, or just kind of nervous about LinkedIn, I was right there with you. So I found this note that I wrote to myself, and this was in 2021. And it says, I've been active weekly on LinkedIn for 7 months, and my business and life has completely transformed. I can't even tell you. I found my voice, learned how I can offer value, been able to help tons of upcoming writers, and up-leveled my business to exactly what I've wanted it to be for about 4 years. Literally, I've been writing the same targets down for 4 years and finally reached them this year. Small steps each day make a big difference. Putting yourself out there makes a big difference, and helping others makes a big difference. So that was kind of my emotion at the time. Like it was so shocking, and it was just a relief to finally kind of break through. And I think that LinkedIn is so powerful in that way right now just because it's the only platform like that, and there's so many professionals tied into it that it creates a big opportunity, but it's just kind of being consistent, getting your messaging straight and sticking with it long enough for it to kind of start to work for you.
I loved that, Jessica. And while everyone gets their questions ready, you could either pop it in the chat or unmute, but I did have some questions from students who couldn't make it live. So in terms of consistency, I think you did answer that. You basically said that you're taking notes and writing it down. Are you scheduling them in advance, your posts, or is it just kind of spur of the moment?
I have tried scheduling them, and I noticed a decrease in impressions and performance. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that, but no, I usually don't schedule them, but I have them kind of queued up for when I want to post, and then I just paste it over.
Interesting. And then was there any posts that just popped for you that you were really surprised about?
Yeah. It's like you can't plan it. You don't really know exactly what's gonna take off, but there have been a few. My biggest post that ever took off was sharing I think you shared it in the last webinar actually. It was like I calculated how estimated how many hours I've been writing, which was like 19,000 or something over 10 years, and then was like, "This is what I've learned," and just broke down the 10 lessons, and that one took off more than anything else, but it definitely seems to be when I'm tying in my personal experience, just authentically sharing and then sharing what I've learned through that.
Yeah, it's funny. Ever since I've been teaching to other freelancers, I've used your profile or your post or something as an example. So when you put your profile up on the screen, I was like, my students have already seen this. Because you always do a great job, which is great. And
Reflected.
it is interesting what you were saying about tying in personal experiences because the only post, because I've been doing this for 30 days now consistently, a little bit over 30 days, and the one post that popped for me has to do with me going to the nail salon and learning about how my nail technician asked me to leave a review. That post has 70,000 impressions, 700 likes, which I've never gotten that many likes on anything. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
it's very simple and basic, and for me, it's a bit eye-opening because I come from B2B sales, whereas in a very male-dominated industry, so I've never really wanted to lean into talking about girly things like nails because it just from having that corporate background, I was always like, "Okay, like, don't be overly feminine because you're gonna stand out too much," especially when the boys are talking about sports and stuff, so
Mhm.
in a way, I was like, I did not expect that post to perform well, but I almost think if you just lean into really what makes you unique, and the truth is, like, I am interested in girly things like hair and nails and makeup, and even though a man might not be able to relate to that, I almost feel like people just wanna know, "Okay, but what are you interested in?" Even if it's not something I'm interested in personally, I see what you're interested in, and that makes you an interesting person. And like
Yeah.
I said, you notice, like, people drink certain drinks, it's like, we don't realize that posting about mundane stuff, like, really is effective.
Yeah, it is because it's real and people can feel that it's real and they relate to it? I shared about experience in a hair salon too, just about how the girl service was just amazing and she won me over. Even though it was more expensive, she's like, "It's gonna be worth it." And I was like, "All right. If you're that confident in it, I believe you." But same thing, that took off too. So I think there's all especially with AI, there's so much content out there that's just like too dry, just too knowledge, and there's no soul behind it. So when somebody gets out there and it's just sharing like a real human, yeah, it resonates.
Exactly. And I did wanna also share that, like, for me personally, if I'm getting 1 inbound lead per month, like, I was just jotting down so many notes as you were speaking because I have been thinking, "Okay, what is my goal with posting on there?" And I think impressions and views and engagement can be deceiving. And I think it's like embarrassing when you first start posting and you feel like you're shouting into the wind and that nobody is engaging and you see a post and you're like, you post and 4 likes come. It's like, that is the hardest part about putting anything out into the world is just knowing that no one's really seeing it yet. And it's like, and I think that's honestly why a lot of people don't start anything when it comes to posting online, but I would just encourage everyone on this call, and I'm saying this because I need to hear it too. it's not as business owners about that really high engagement that we see influencers getting. It's so easy to get wrapped up with the way influencers are on Instagram or TikTok and think, well, if it's not popping off, what is the point? But there's a downside to virality when you have a business, because if you're gaining the wrong type of attention, it could totally derail what you're trying to achieve, which is to get in front of a very specific type of client. So I just want to remind everybody, like, yes, impressions and likes and comments are great, but a post can catch someone's eye and resonate with them and they could hire you. And that's worth over $1,000, even if you got 2 likes on it, right?
Yeah. And even when setting lead goal or like inbound lead goals, it's like we need what as writers, 5 to 10 clients. It's not a lot, once you get that going, it's like if you're getting 5 leads a month, within a few months, you can have your a completely new roster. You can have more work than you could even do. So it's like once this starts working, you don't have to keep going hard forever. Once you have like a base going and you have some leads, it's like we can only take so much business. We only need 5 to 7 or 5 to 8. So once it starts working, it's like your whole business and life can be altered rather quickly. And then from that point, it's just maintenance. Like maybe I could improve a little bit more for my ideal client. Maybe I could tweak this a little bit.
Yeah, and I love what you said too about changing your niche and kind of fine tuning that, because personally, I've been someone who I've done different niche focuses. I've always been in the umbrella of tech, but at one point I was branding myself as a sales enablement tech writer. Now I want to kind of gear more towards like quote unquote creator economy SaaS products like Kajabi or ConvertKit email marketing. So I want to encourage everybody to be fluid until you find something that actually really does fit, because we do determine the course of our business and what we want it to be. We don't have to be pigeonholed in this like really tight niche or think that this decision of a niche is going to keep us boxed in forever.
Yeah. And it helps to pay attention to what you're getting, what kind of work is in demand rather than trying to figure it all out in your head. Like you can experiment and you can actually go back and look at the data to say, okay, what is that? What do people really need right now?
Absolutely. I'm thinking of writing an intro post. I really like that you showed that, like, there's new people around here. Let me introduce myself. I'm going to work on that. Also, when you talked about like the type of skills that set you apart and like your past experience, I'm like brainstorming post ideas as you're talking.
I love
I'm
it.
I'm gonna write a post about how I used to be in sales, but I think part of the reason why I couldn't hack it in sales was because I'm very empathetic. And I think that being highly sensitive actually makes me a better fit for marketing. So thank you for inspiring this post. And that's what you were saying. Like you could be anywhere and you get a post idea and you're like, oh, I want to turn that into a post. And it does start becoming more natural.
Yeah. Your brain just like switches into this content mode. And then you have to be careful. Like you don't want to turn everything into content.
Jessica, tell us about how people can get in touch with you. You mentioned your newsletter, but plug away.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I connect with writers all the time. I love if I get connection requests, I'm accepting it. I love to chat in the DMs there. And then I run all things freelance writing, which is a community for freelance writers. But yeah, the website's a blog and it's basically a place where all different writers, not just me, but other experienced writers come to share their experiences, their lessons, their learnings. And then I run the jobs newsletter every Friday, which is free and you can subscribe and you'll get a list of jobs that I found around LinkedIn and Twitter and other places that week along with other resources and news and updates. So I guess we can add the link under this video and then into your group if they want to sign up. But the best place to start is probably the newsletter, and then you'll get connected to everything else through there.
And Helen asked, was there a moment when your follower numbers skyrocketed? And I'm curious about that too, because you have a lot of followers on LinkedIn.
You always get a boost if a post takes off, which you probably just experienced. But no, it's just been really slow and steady for me. Like I said, I started in 2016. So I joined and there was no limits to sending requests at that time. And nobody was posting. It wasn't like a platform like that. It was like a resume site. But there were clients on there who were who DM'd me asking for work. So I was like, okay, I'll just connect with more editors on there. And the platform I was using to get jobs closed down, so I was kind of panicking. So I came to Upwork, which wasn't established yet, and LinkedIn, and I would just connect with 20, 50, 100 people. Just, "Hey, I'm Jessica, I'm a freelance writer," basically introducing myself. And so I did that for like 3 years, almost every workday. So that grew it a lot in the beginning. And then I never imagined LinkedIn would be as popular as it is. So that just kind of worked out and was lucky. But once I started posting regularly, I'll grow connections and get followers that way. But it hasn't really been any event that was a big, like, all of a sudden I got 10,000 or something. It's just slow and steady.
Yeah, and I see a lot of like even big YouTubers say like, there was never any one moment. It's just been very gradual, consistent over a period of time. And I think that's the case for many people. So I love that. Well, Jessica, thank you so, so much for sharing. Super valuable. I'm super inspired. I hope everyone else is too. And yes, you will get the replay to this. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love to share my story just because I was in that position before, so I know how it feels, and I'm like, "This actually works." I just want other people to know too because I think we all have our own little niches and area corners of the market, so if we can help each other, why not?
Yes, and that's what I love about you, Jessica, is like you genuinely want to help people. And I think when you found some success doing something, you do just want to share it with other people from a genuine place. And I know that's your heart. So that's why I always love to have you on any chance that I can get.